Good evening. We're going to get started shortly. We're going to let people jump on. So everybody who's here to listen to Thriving Motherhood, we're so excited. We're glad to be up and running. So please definitely share with your family and friends. They don't have to necessarily be a mom because it's going to be all about education, learning, and sharing blessings with each other. And knowledge is power, and just really uplifting everyone when it comes to being a woman and being a mom and all that it wrapped up to be. We're going to want your comments in the comment section on YouTube or Facebook. No matter how you're listening, it's going to be a great discussion for everyone. So definitely go ahead and share it with everyone that you know. How are you ladies feeling tonight? I'm excited to hear your wise advice. How are y'all feeling?
Good. Great. Yeah. I'm just excited that we're here like right before Mother's Day, and I'm kind of older, so it would have been nice to have this when my kids were growing up.
Definitely. I'm going to say it again, but I'm not a mom, so I'm about to take all kind of notes because Lord willing, I hope to be a mom one day. And I'm like, there's no handbook, right? There's no handbook to how we're supposed to do this motherhood thing.
Well, technically there's a handbook.
Yes, there is. Oh, yes, there is. Can you elaborate for everyone?
I mean, he has instructions throughout the whole Bible,
Amen.
There's a guide there just for you to go through, and you can ask him any question and it's there.
Amen. All right. So I think we're just going to go ahead and get started and jump right in. Continue sharing, everyone. I was waiting to let people have time to get on and share the link with family and friends. So continue to do that. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Well, first off, good evening, and thanks again to everyone for joining us. Remember, we have comments that are coming through that we are going to be sharing. So this is going to be a discussion. This is not just you watching. This is you reacting, commenting, adding your questions, adding your tips. In fact, while we're waiting, if you're a mom and you're watching, tell us how old your children are. Are they adult? Are you a grandmother? Are your kids little? Are you expecting? We want to see how many people are on here from different walks of life. Do you not have kids? That's great. Are you here just to learn? Are you a husband who's wanting to learn how you can be more supportive of your wife? We want to hear all of it. So definitely go ahead and share. So the reason we're here is because we're talking about thriving motherhood. Okay. Sometimes people like to say, oh, I'm just surviving. But you know what? We need to look at it the way it's really happening. You are thriving as a mother. And I am so excited to be here with these lovely women that you see on the screen. So I'm going to stop talking so I can introduce you to them. We are a part of the Wise Women Project. That's a part of Crossover Bible Fellowship. It is the women's ministry. I'm Jennifer Moore, and while I am not a mom, I hope to one day be one. So I'm excited to hear from the ladies tonight. We have Catrice Williams, who is a grandmother and businesswoman. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you.
Glad you're here. We also have Alicia Caesar, who is a mom and an educator. How's it going?
Hi there.
And we have Sherelle Ogletree, who's a mom and a nurse practitioner. How are you?
I'm great. Hi.
Glad to have you here. And of course, Jacqueline Malone, who's a mom and businesswoman. How are you?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And Jacqueline's going to be monitoring those comment sections. So she'll be letting us know what you all are saying if we don't see it ourselves. So first up, let's just jump right in. What's your one phrase of encouragement for moms out there? Anyone can go.
The first thing I thought of was, this day and age, moms are so multitask. I just want them to slow down, be in the moment, because every stage they go through is different. And you really want to be there and be present and not have any perfection and always have to meet something, just be there with them so you can remember those times, because you will miss them.
That's good.
I would say give yourself some grace.
Mhm.
We have all of these, especially now with social media. You have people who post their picture perfect children, and women on the outside try to live up to that standard. Just give yourself some grace, because none of us have all the answers.
That's good.
I would say above all else, your kids need love. I mean, we try to give them education, experiences, gifts, all of those things. And those are great, but the biggest thing they need is time and love. And so if they're getting those things, then you're doing great.
That's awesome.
I love that. Yes, they need love. Like I love that. I think that's phenomenal. I would say we can rest and still be worthy. I feel like we need to abandon the belief that hustling and busy mothers are more worthy, and that our worth is in Christ. Hustling and busy does not mean, like, you can rest and still be worthy. So that's my one piece of advice.
That's good. If everybody was off mute, you would hear like reaction. I just see everybody like waving like, yes. Did I get everyone? Did I miss anyone? All right. Well, let's jump in also. So now these questions that I'm asking, and this is a discussion, these came from you all, not just the people here, but everyone. We texted people, we asked people different, scenarios and questions that they want answers to. So the first one was, how do I stay diligent about not losing my identity as a person and wife while also walking in my identity as a mom?
I will take that one. So I would like to say first, from personal experience, that identity is found in Christ, period, like dot, exclamation mark, nothing added. And the next thing I would say, the call to motherhood is not to be a martyr, but to be a model. And I think a lot of times as mothers, we feel like we have to die in order for our children to be present, like our gifts and the things that we have and who we are. We put those to death so our children can live. And our culture portrays that the mothers who do that are better mothers, because they, you get around these mom chats, we're like, well, I gave up this, and I gave up my job, and I did this, and like they get this prize, kind of like the moms who didn't get an epidural, like they're the winners, but nobody really cares because we all had the children. Like, nobody gets a prize for not having an epidural. So I would say, like, don't give up who you are as a mother. Like, and a lot of times it makes me cringe, but like when people say, who are you, Sherelle? And my first thing is like, oh, I'm a mom, I'm a friend, I'm a wife. But that describes like roles, right? Like motherhood, we've made it a verb and not a noun. Like we've made it something to do and not something to be. And so I would say that your identity is in Christ. Don't give up who you are as a woman. You find a lot of people get divorced when their children are gone because they never learned to love each other. They've only learned to be in a marriage with children, and now that children aren't there, they don't know who they are, right? And so like, just figure out who you are. What sets your soul on fire? What is it that you are as a person outside of your children, outside of your husband? What is it that is beautiful to you? Like, what do you love? What just makes your heart melt? So find that and tap into that outside of your kids, outside of your husband. And that will make you a better husband, a better wife, a better friend. Like, stay in touch with that.
That's really good. When you were talking, it made me think of mom shaming. You always hear people are mom shaming, like, do you breastfeed? Do you not? Did you get an epidural? Did you not? And it's like, everybody's in the same hustle right now. Like,
and everybody's doing the absolute best that they can. So, and everybody's situation is different. You have different dynamics. So yes, everybody's doing the best they can. So no mom shaming.
Safe place, no mom shaming. All right, the next, did anyone have anything else you wanted to share on that? I thought that was good, talking about identity, and because I think even before you're a mom, you're kind of like, you know, if you want children, you're like, when am I going to be a mom? Like you think that's going to be your identity. So then when you get it, I can see why a lot of women are like, I'm a mom. What else am I? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I am. And they're proud of it, as you should be. But it was interesting. You pointed out, like, those are roles, not necessarily who you are. All right, let's go on. I wanted to also talk about when you have small children. Someone asked us, what expectations should a wife have for her husband when it comes to dealing with small babies? Any advice there?
I have small babies. I have 3 and 22 months, so almost 2. So I had 2 under 2. And as far as expectations, you should have spoken ones. You know, the responsibilities that come along with, you know, caring for a new human, whether they're, you know, the first baby, the second baby, the 5th baby, the 17th baby, whatever the case is, you have a whole new human. And so more responsibility comes with raising, you know, your children. So whether it's newborn, toddler phase, as long as you're communicating those expectations, the problem comes in when you just expect things. You expect X, Y, and Z to happen. X, Y, and Z doesn't happen. You're disappointed. There's friction. You bump heads. All of that. I know when when Joa was first born, I was like, you see me, I'm sleep deprived, I'm breastfeeding all hours of the day, I'm not making enough milk, so I'm pumping like literally at 2 and 3 in the morning to make sure I had enough milk the next day. You know, I'm healing. I just, 8 pounds just came out of me. You know, all of those things. My hormones are all over the place. And so in my mind, I'm like, you see this. Can you please do X, Y, and Z without me having to ask? But that was my issue because I never communicated what is X, Y, and Z. So he's doing ABC thinking he's helping. And ABC is helpful, but that's not what I need you to do. That's not what I need you to do right now. So I would just say spoken expectations. And it's not fair. We actually went and got counseling. The biggest thing I learned, because we were bumping heads so much right after Joe was born, the biggest thing I learned is he's not a mind reader and I can't expect him to be one, just like I can't, and vice versa. So as far as some practical things that, guys can do, obviously they can't breastfeed. There's something about a mother's touch. So there's, some comforting that's only going to come from the mom, but there is a laundry list of things that they can do. So some tangible ideas: make bottles, make sure bottles are ready in the refrigerator. Or, whether it's formula, whatever the case is, bathing kids, changing diapers, picking out clothes, making lunches. The list is very long. Making sure that you have a day or 3 or 5 to make sure dinner is ready. So there are things that can help. And one of the things that we did is I said, hey, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. It would really, really help me out if you did 1, 2, and 3. So if you could have dinner on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays ready, if you could take the shift from 10 to 3, the babies usually sleep then, but if they wake up, you can go get them then, give them a bottle, get back in bed. If I can get those 5 solid hours, then I'm good. So I would just say that there are all kinds of expectations that come along with having a child, but they do need to be spoken. They need to be communicated to your husband. And actually, I say husband, but that would work in a co-parenting situation as well. You have to speak your expectations and make them clear so that there can be harmony, because everybody has the baby's best interest at heart. So that's what I would say.
That's really good, the communication. I mean, at the end of the day, people can't read your mind. And I bet like the hormones and everything, or your body's trying to get back to normal. Show us grace, Lord. But yeah, you're just trying to figure that all out, and people won't know, especially as men, they probably don't, they can't, they don't have any idea. That's really great advice. Another question we also received was, we're in a pandemic still, even though Texas and everybody's starting to open it up, it's still a pandemic. And when you have children, you're sending them to school, you're keeping them at home, you're becoming mom/teacher, like how do you deal with both? And like for kids at home, their emotional needs, their mental, their social factors, I know that's a loaded question, but what advice have you all found that you could offer others?
So I'll take that one because that's something that I had to deal with as a mom and as a teacher. my children at first were at home. They were doing the virtual learning, and I was in the classroom at the same time with hybrid classes. So while I'm on Zoom trying to teach my face-to-face kids, and I have ESL students, so that's a whole nother, how do you communicate and even help them log in when their first language isn't English. And meanwhile, my daughter is having an emotional breakdown because she can't get logged in at home. So it was a lot of prayer, a lot of crying in my pillow, like, Jesus, this is too much. And so I started doing like my own research for myself to try to figure out how to help my kids at home and how to support my parents. So I'm a big advocate for supporting parents, because if you support parents, kids do well. So one of the first things that I had to recognize, and that I tell parents when they call me struggling, is you set the tone as the parent. If you are speaking doom and gloom and stress, that will be translated to your kids. That's exactly how they'll feel. So you have to check your own emotions first. You have to learn how to bring some stuff to God and say, God, this is too much for me to handle. Help me. That was my prayer. Help me to get myself together so that I can support my kids. So take care of your emotional needs, and then you can take care of theirs. That's first. Secondly, kids need to be able to talk. You have to ask them questions. They won't just, most times, they won't just come out and say, Mom, I'm struggling with this, or Dad, I'm struggling with this. So you might have to go to them and say, hey, how are you dealing with this? You can't go see your friends. You can't go visit family. You're hearing about friends that's sick. Like, how are you dealing with that? And I found that for my own kids, once I opened up that conversation and they asked the first time, like, can I really say how I feel? Absolutely. It's okay to say this sucks. It's okay to say I'm frustrated. It's okay to say I'm tired of video chatting my friends. It's okay to say I'm mad that I can't go outside. That's okay. So just allowing them to be okay with being angry. Because at school, most of my kids, when I talk to them, and I have freshmen and sophomores, so, they think they're grown, but they are big babies. They are such babies. And when they come to me, they're honest and they're like, Miss Caesar, I can't tell my mom this. Like, by the time she comes home, she's done. She's done. So then I let big kids like 16, 17 fall apart because they can't see their girlfriends, which, or is a big deal. And most of the times it's just because they wish they could talk to their parents, but their parents come home on edge. And so they just don't. But then they'll open up to me. So control yourself, your emotions, let your kids be able to talk, and finally find balance. With the online situation, they're online for school all day long. And I'm a teacher that's mindful of the amount of like homework and stuff that I give, but to be honest, not all teachers are that mindful. So if the kids are on Zoom all day long and they get off and they're on the computer for hours at night doing homework, and then when they get off, it doesn't matter how long they've been online, they will be plugged into Snapchat and Instagram and blah, blah, blah. That's hours upon hours of screen time. So I started just being more mindful about doing things like Friday night is game night. And it's nothing digital. It's board games, it's puzzles, I even bought Nerf guns and Advil because I was in pain afterwards. But it's like, let's go in the backyard and run around with the Nerf guns and play and do something to take a break from the screen. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's really good. Because what I heard from that is, one, kids can recognize your emotions, and what state you're in, and kids care about their parents, so they don't want to add more to their parents' plate if they feel like their parents are already stressed. And then they need an outlet too. So making sure that they have an outlet. You may think, oh, they're kids, they're not, but they're not experiencing life the way normal kids should be experiencing life right now. So that's really good. And what I was wondering, I was like, also, if anyone's watching this, if you have any tips that you've learned or things to help parents, put it in our YouTube channel right now in the comments. And if you want to make a comment, just make sure to sign into your YouTube account and then you'll be able to add the comments and other people can read them and learn, and then we can also share them as well.
I just wanted to piggyback off Caesar. I feel like when she said that their feelings are valid, if you are a mom of young kids, that starts young. So if they are just learning, how to communicate, and you always shut them up, or you don't tell me what you don't want to do, or, whatever the case is, that's learned from a very early age. So she's dealing with freshmen and sophomores, or sophomores and juniors, freshmen, high school. But this has probably been taught to them from their parents from a very early age, that they can't express what they're feeling. So if you're a mom of a young child, I would go ahead and start allowing them to express themselves very early, and then maybe you can avoid some of this. So.
And then one last thing, because I've seen an increase in children from middle school to high school, because I still have kids I mentor at middle school. Pay attention to anxiety and depression. That's a biggie, because I have a lot of kids who they cut, they burn themselves, they take their parents' pills, they drink, they smoke, and a lot of it, they're just trying to cope and in unhealthy ways. And when kids can't talk to adults, they do the dumbest thing in the world. They talk to other children. And so they're receiving unwise advice, and they're just coping in unhealthy ways. So I make it a habit to give parents like numbers to hotlines for counseling, for suicide prevention. So sometimes parents don't always, from what I've experienced, they don't want to admit my child has a problem. That doesn't make you a bad parent. That just means that you need help. All of us as moms, we need a village. And so that counselor might be a part of your village. Whoever that child chooses as an outlet, that's a part of your village. So just being aware of like those warning signs, and just being willing to get help, additional help, if your child needs it.
That's really good. And when you said a village, it made me think of, because we talked about mom shaming and mothers, feeling like they have to give their all, and sacrifice almost themselves. Do you feel like it was important for you all to make sure you had other moms that you felt like you can confide in? Could you talk about that? Anyone?
I thought it was important. And I think it's important to have a variety of ages. And so the wisdom is there from a variety of standpoints. I have a best friend that I talk to about everything deep and wide. Like we just talk and we pour our hearts out. And I think that's important for mothers, because then that person kind of reminds you that this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. And the way you're running, you're going to wear yourself out, girlfriend. I need you to slow down, back up, and stop and breathe and dig real deep and ask God to show you, versus just trying to do it on your own, or what social media tells you a mom is supposed to be, because that's not it. That's their highlight reel. That's not the back end of the show. So.
I would just also add that you need a mom and girlfriends that you don't have to qualify your statements. Like, hey, my 2 toddlers drove me up the wall today. That I don't have to say, I love my kids, and you're like all of that. Like that's not necessary. It's right now. I'm obsessed with my kids, but they drove me up the wall today. They whined, they were shouting, they were not patient, they knocked over their milk 15 times. Like all of that can drive you nuts. So in this moment, I just need you to listen without having to qualify my statements as a mother. So beware of that as well.
That's real good. Another question that we also received was, as you deal with adult children, how do you keep boundaries between mom and friend, like defined by your adult daughter? Like, I'm not your friend, I'm your mom, and then there's some relationships where it's like, yeah, my mom's my best friend. Like, how do you go about that?
I think I'll take that one. I think it says train up a child. And I think once you train that child, for me, I never had the issue because it was always a mom. I don't think it's anything wrong with your kid saying you're your best friend. You might want to hold on to it for a while. It might not last as long as you might think it is, because there is instructions and discipline, and it automatically gives you the authority over your kid. But you also want to make sure that you're parenting. When you're parenting by training them up, you basically know that they are that you are the authoritative figure in their life. That even as an adult, my kid is an adult, and your relationships do change as an adult. But what happens is you become you're still friends. You still have this rapport that, in fact, right before this, she's calling me just to see how I'm doing, and the relationships change. But she also calls me now to say, "Hey, Mom, what do you think about this?" Or, "Mom, I'm having this kind of a day," or, "I'm having this work." You just become more of that not so much mentor. You become more of the person that you can give them sound advice, but also give them the choice and the freedom to choose, how they're going to navigate, because no kid is the same. So, you also want to make sure that you're also giving them a chance just to be who they are, and loving them, like Jacqueline said earlier, loving them to the moon and back, but also, stepping away and letting them reach God, to get to God, and trust God and his provisions. And you can't be everything and all of everything for them. So I think that's just some of the things. Do you guys have any other things to add to it? Or, because that's the way my relationship works now. Just guiding them.
That's really good. It's like you become a counselor, you're still mom, but you're mom / counselor.
Yeah, but I'm also, but don't get me wrong, I'm also the mom. I'm not going to party with you. I'm not going to dress in a certain manner. I'm not perfect, and I want to have a great time with you, but I'm also not that kind of friend. Okay. So,
I like it.
I am not going to, I want to be an example. I want to dress in a certain manner. I want to speak in a certain manner. I don't want to give you perfection, because that's one thing we don't want to give our kids. We want them to know the good, the bad, and the ugly of things sometimes, so they know how to cope in life. But I will not be the mom that's going to be the friend. I'm not going certain places. I'm not doing certain things. When certain things that your cookout starts, then okay, Mom and Dad, it's time to go. So they know the difference.
I like that.
Yeah.
She said, "Put some respect on my name. I'm still mom."
Yes.
Don't get it twisted.
On YouTube, Audrey said, "My daughter and I have a great relationship, but she said, respect the adult child as an adult and stay in your lane," in all caps. So I think that's another good way to say it. Stay in your lane.
Exactly, especially when they start getting married and having kids. I mean, you have to really respect, even when my grandkids come over, I'm like, what did your mom say you can have? I want to respect what's going on at her house just as much as she wants to respect what mommy's going to do when they get to my house, which you can't control that I'm going to give them candy. But I do, when it comes to the things, you don't want to be on different, you want to be on the same page as mommy. I saw something the other day on television where the baby had long hair, and it came over to the grandmother's, and she hated it, and now she cut the baby's hair at the grandma. I would never do that. That's really not respecting my kids, what she wants to do in her life for her kids. Matters if I like it or not.
That's really good. That's great advice. And then also, a question I just randomly thought of was, sometimes moms, they get a bad rap from their husbands or the guys in the family, like, stop babying that child, or, like, stop coddling the baby or whatever. Did you all find, for those of you who have had your children get older, did you find a struggle between, am I babying my kid, or am I, pushing them to be able to, you know, fly?
And
maybe not if you haven't.
I think you can do both.
Okay.
I mean, I think you can. I haven't had a baby in a long time, but I think you can do both. I think they need both, you know, just so they can cope in life. I really do think that sometimes, you know, because I wasn't the perfect mom, so I think sometimes you make the mistake of, oh, you're trying to push them one way, and really, honestly, if you just sit back, they will guide it. They kind of guide themselves a little more than we think. And I hate to admit that, but they do. Well, God guides them.
God got them. That's
Mhm.
good. So as a mom, you know, you want to stay hip, you want to stay young, or maybe not, but you kind of do when you're dealing with your children and they're getting raised. So one question came up with, what are practical ways to keep up with apps, lingo, sexual orientation, trends, all that stuff? That was one of the questions submitted.
So I guess I'll be brave and try that one again. So just teaching middle school, I taught middle school for about 8 or 9 years, and I went back to high school. So I've been back in high school for about 2 years. And unfortunately, you hear all of that, things that you don't want to hear. You hear it in the hallways. The kids come and talk to me and they're like, Miss Caesar, can I be transparent? Or they're like, Miss C, and then everything comes out. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. So one, I would say, it just goes back to communication. If they don't talk to you, they are going to get the answers that they're looking for, but it's not going to be good because they're going to get it from their friends. So as far as like things about their lingo and the trends and blah, 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 I just ask my kids what's going on. And I learned to do that from having so many children come to me and say, I can't talk to my mom. I can't talk to my dad. You would be amazed how many kids I found out they were pregnant. I found out they were harming themselves. I have a girl earlier this year, I talked her out of a relationship and she was being abused by her boyfriend. And I just paid attention to how he would yank her out of my class. And so I started asking her questions and I'm like, hey, does your mom know what's going on? And she's like, I wouldn't even tell her. So they just have to be able to come and talk to you. So that made me come home and ask my kids often, do we need to talk about anything today? Like, how was school? What happened? Tell me what's going on. Sometimes the conversation is a lot and I just smile and nod through it. Okay. And then when they go to bed, I go in the room and just unload and cry and snot. And then I come back out like a gangster, like, okay, we can talk again tomorrow. Because sometimes it's oh man, it is a lot, especially when you start talking about like sex and who's what, and this kid was this yesterday and today he's Elliot, or which pronoun do I use, mom? Like that's one of the questions that's been coming up a lot, even at school and at home. Like, my friend is this and I don't feel comfortable because I'm using the wrong pronouns. And what does God say about this? So they have to be able to talk to you. As far as like apps, for me, apps, social media, and music, my rule in my house is if you're on it, I'm on it, and I'm your friend. If I can't be your friend, then that means you're doing something that you don't have any business doing, and we're going to have a conversation that you're not going to like. And I pay your cell phone bill. So if you're on it, I'm on it, and we're friends. And even my daughter, I've had to talk to her about being mindful of how you look, your social media presence, talking to my son, like, be mindful of not just how you look, because boys, they do the little cheesy, like, want to be manly, like thing, but be mindful of what girls send to you, because some of these girls like are sending everything. And I'm like, son, you are 16 and 17. And I want you to know that if a mom calls and you're 16 or 17, that's a different conversation that could be involved with legal issues. So don't receive, don't forward any, don't, hey man, did you see? So again, it's conversations that's not always easy to have, but you have to have them. I want to know what music you're listening to. we talk about lyrics, like you're not singing that song because this is what that song is saying. Or I'll just ask, tell me what those lyrics mean because you're singing it. And then by the time I make them think about it, they're like, oh, maybe that's something I shouldn't listen to. Exactly. So
that's good. That's really good advice. And for anyone asking your kid for account, ask for their Finsta account too. I learned Finsta means it's their fake account that they have that no one would know, but technically it's their account and usually their parents don't know. So there you go. One question, going back to children and marriage. We had someone ask, what are the ways to continue to build your marriage while you're in the midst of a crazy schedule of raising kids? How do you stay focused on one another as a married couple?
I was like, that one, wow. That's a loaded one.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote this quote down because it was important to me. Desmond Tutu said, there comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling. And I substituted that with marriage. Like there's a point when we need to find out why we just got to stop pulling people out of the river with their failing marriages, and we need to understand why. And I think when I think about motherhood, I think about, because we put everyone else above ourselves. We talked about that earlier, including our marriage. So our children know that they're the love of our lives, but then they don't see that our husbands are the love of our lives and we love ourselves. They just know these little self-centered boogers, which they're cute, but they know the world revolves around them, right? But they don't see the love of our husbands and the love of who we are, because we put those on the back burner a lot. And so I go back to say, it makes me think about why marriages are failing today, why people are not even getting married, and what's the root of the problem. And I think it's because we tend to think we marry the person that we first fell in love with and they never change. And that's not true. People change over time. I mean, there's a small part of you that is not going to stay the same, but gosh, when my husband married my 20-year-old self, I am nowhere the same to where I am today. I've changed the color that I like. I don't even like the same colors anymore. So it takes work. And so I say that, like us having date night, and those date nights are unconventional sometimes. Sometimes that means we pay for a paint party and we sit on the back porch and we paint in a paint class. Sometimes it's ordering things off of Amazon and having cards, or reading a book. We both have the same book and we talk about the chapter at the end of the week. So there's a book on marriage, and then we'll read a chapter together, and then we'll talk about what we thought about the chapter at the end. And I think that's very important, and continuing to figure out how your spouse has changed. I think that's important. I think a lot of times we just muddy through life and we don't think about our spouse as human, and they make mistakes. And yes, we have expectations of them, but we also need to learn them every day. Like I always say, keep it spicy sometimes. Don't nobody want you walking out with hair rollers all the time. You can get a little dress with a split on the side if y'all going outside. It's okay. The split can go up a little bit higher than normal. Your husband, I'm not saying excuses for anything else, but I think we have to figure out what makes their heart flutter. And, yes, he loves the core of who I am as a Christian, but he also loves me, my personality, my body type, who I am. And I think there are things about him that I adore and I love. And I think you got to connect to that piece in marriage and figure out how to creatively, like I saw during the pandemic, backyard, a truck, date night, like folk got whatever they could. And I thought that was valuable to do. Even now, like we'll sneak out during a day date and just, I don't care, we go somewhere. Sometimes it's just at night when the kids sleep, like, Lord, the kids sleep, thank you, Jesus, let's talk for 10 minutes. So do whatever you can, but think about about your spouse, think about how they've evolved, think about what they still love and what you've seen change, and really put some thought into it. Like my husband, no, I don't want flowers no more. Flowers gonna die. When I was young, flowers was cute. Like I got flowers at work. Send me some cookies. Like I like cookies now. You know, figure out what makes my heart flutter. But yeah, that's what I got. Anybody else?
I was just going to say, I love that you say it's ever evolving. Dynamics change, jobs change, kids come, multiple kids come. It's always evolving. And so studying your spouse is important. Otherwise, that's how you can easily lose yourself. And I'm preaching to the choir.
No, that's great advice. It's like you got to keep dating. Everyone says that, keep dating, and your children need to see you keep dating. That teaches them healthy marriage, healthy relationships. I know one of my best friends, Mariah, her and her husband have 3 small children, and what they do is once the kids are down in bed, because they go to bed early, they're young, they make sure they have an hour of their own time. He's doing his thing in his man cave, she's doing her thing. And then they have an hour of like together time where like they're catching up on their favorite show or just being in each other's presence. And I just love that. I just think that's like great advice. And something I didn't even think about, as a single woman, that when you get married, you got to make sure you're having that special time. Because like you said earlier, once the kids are older, a lot of marriages fall apart because the kids are out of the house and they're like, wait, they're looking at each other like, who are you? So that's really great advice. So anyone in the comments and YouTube, share your advice about how you keep it spicy, how you keep the relationship with young children, especially. Going back to adult children, someone asked, when is it okay to say no if your adult child asks for financial assistance?
I'll take that one. So I think it's time to say no if they're making bad decisions. Because sometimes as mom, you want to fix everything, and everything's not for us to fix. It's hard to take away because you've given your kid everything from what, 1 through 20 something. You've had a kid for 20 years. And so all of a sudden now they're into adulthood and they still want to continue that because that's what what they're used to and what you have come accustomed to. So, but at some point you have to, first of all, let me say this, every kid is different. So you'll have some kid and you'll have 2 kids and one will be like night and one will be like night and day, right? But the kid that you're going to have to say no to is the kid that's always coming back. And you have to ask the reason why, because it's a time now to give them sound advice on financials. How are you handling your money? How are you, can we sit and talk about a budget? It's a time to open a conversation without being judgmental, without being condescending, because we want to speak roses, but it's not going to always come out that way. But you do want to speak to them as adults because they'll never come back to you for anything and they'll sink and swim and you could have given them sound advice. So me saying no in my role was basically, if it was for a decision that made sense, it just made sense, it could be yes, right? But if it's something you bought and you keep doing the same thing over, you can't afford it, then, I'm like God used to do in the Old Testament. He would send his people into exile to figure it out, right? So for me, sometimes you got to cut them off. You have to go into exile and just kind of fend for yourself. Or if they, buying something that you can't afford or you keep overextending yourself, come to me. Until sometimes they don't want sound advice right away until you cut them off, and sometimes you really make them start realizing, not to mention we can hinder them from hearing from God. We can hinder them from not knowing that he's going to give you his provision. So it's basically depending on the child, and when you really know, you'll know as a parent when to step away. So if you bought your your Rolls Royce and you can't make the next payment. Well, mom's not going to help you make that payment. You know why? Because first of all, I can afford to make that payment for you. Because I want to be debt free too, right? But I want to, I'm going to say, I'm going to give you sound advice. Hey, sweetie, you might can't afford this. So how about if you see what we can do to get you on a path to where you can get something you can afford, and I can help you there. But you also want to have them take steps before you intervene. Because if they're not showing the maturity for the steps that you're trying to give them, they're still not ready for the sound advice that you need to give them for the financial part of the financial part of, helping them. You can't help someone that, what the old people used to say, that won't help themselves,
Yeah.
So
In,
that's what
in
I
the
would say. Huh?
in the comments on YouTube, it says it's okay to share your financial failures as a learning tool as well, because we didn't all make, the best decisions. So you can use that. Hey, I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. So I thought that was really good.
Yeah, for sure.
That's good advice. It makes me wonder, do you all prioritize teaching finances early with your children, since that's such a big topic in our community as we get older that we're constantly trying to learn? Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to move it back on to younger children. Someone asked, when it comes to multiple children, struggling with comparison, like someone wrote us saying that they just knew that the second child would be just like the first. So what advice do we have for moms with the children and the comparison?
So I have two, and they are very different, very, very different. And I am a little bit of a crazy mom. I document everything. I have a very detailed baby book with pictures and when they did, X, Y, and Z, when they got their first tooth and all of that. And so when Joel was born and I had everything written down, when Joy was born, I had everything written down. And so when I saw at 6 months that she wasn't doing the exact same things that Joy was doing, I was like, oh, what's going on? So it wasn't like she was behind or anything, but and I'm naturally competitive, which is also an issue. But I literally had to sit myself down because I caught myself comparing the two kids. And it was like as clear as day. God was like, you're not studying Joy. And so I started looking, and she had different bents. So, Joa loves books. He loves, learning. He loves engineering type things, building and things of that nature. And he did a lot of things very, very early. But when I documented what Joy was doing, she loves art and she loves music and she clapped early and, all of those things. So she has, just different loves. And actually for the longest time I thought that what's the phrase, comparison is the thief of all joy, or I thought that was biblical. It's not biblical. I thought it was in the Bible. It's not. But I think the concept is the same. You usually think of comparison as the thief of all joy when you compare yourself to someone else. But for me, it was with my kids. I wasn't able to fully enjoy everything that Joy was because I kept comparing her to Joa. And once I realized, I was like, you know what? Joa is fearfully and wonderfully made. Joy is fearfully and wonderfully made. Just like God knew Joa in the womb, he knew Joy in the womb, and she has her own likes, her own dislikes, her own strengths, her own weaknesses. And so it is absolutely our job as parents to study our kids, just like we were talking about studying your spouse to make sure, they're ever evolving. The kids are also ever evolving, to study them and to make sure that we get the privilege of raising them to be thriving adults, to want to love God, to love their families, to be, great employees, great friends, all of those things. And we get to mold them while they're young. So comparing will steal the joy of you, learning each child. So
That's really good advice. Anyone else?
I'll say that continues as they get older also. I haven't always been the best in that area because it's just difficult. My son was naturally GT, but he has horrible work ethics. He doesn't study because he's like, I don't have to study like common people. So he's arrogant, which makes me want to. But I'm like, fine, like I need for you to balance, the gift with the work ethic because it's going to bite you in the butt later. And now that he's older, he's seeing that. Meanwhile, my daughter is extremely hard on herself because it doesn't always come as easily as it does for her brother. However, I never have to ask her if she's done her homework because she will not go to sleep until it's done. I never have to really ask her, are your clothes ready for school tomorrow? Because it's done. She's the one that's like, Mama, your lip gloss is popping. Let's get to work on time. Let's get to church on time. Whereas my son is like chilling. Like when I show up, that's when the party starts. So like I have to constantly like remind myself that I try to remind myself so that I'm not so hard on my son. Like I need for him to learn to have the work ethic, but I can't beat him down to try to make him have the work ethic of his sister. And I want my daughter to do well, but I want to let her know it's okay if you have to work a little harder. Like everybody has their own gifts and talents. And then just show them where that is in the Bible so they can see this is not mom just saying that because she loves you. This is the Bible says, like we all have our own talents and it's okay. So just that comparing between children, that's just something that you will grow. That's just an area you'll grow in constantly, even as they get older.
Really good. And, a question I just thought about is, with all that we're talking about and the amazing things that moms do, how do you all recognize for yourself when you might have reached a breaking point or you need to step back or you need to, you're getting too much anxiety or stress? How do you recognize it? And then what do you do? Room is for anyone.
I think for me, I become the ultimate snappy pants. So I know when I am barking out orders like nobody's business, like get in here, clean this room up, this kitchen better be clean, like I'm strict, like way up here. And so in that, I've learned that I have to really step back and really understand when my cup is not full. Because when I'm empty, I tend to just go into the mode of let's get it done. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's at the expense of my own children's emotions, my husband, like, get away from me. Don't look at me. Don't rub my leg. I just being real. Like, it's because I'm stressed. And I think it's just, I just become snappy pants. And so I have to step back and say, okay, Sherelle, what do you need in this moment? Because there's something that you need. And it may be rest. It may be I'm anxious about something and I'm trying to control that. And I guess maybe it's snappy pants because it's control. When I feel like things are out of control, I typically try to control them. And my risk of control or my way of control is like getting my house in order, cleaning, just putting things together in my mind. And sometimes that's not having a refill. I have to sit still with God for a moment, not do this elaborate prayer, not go do this deep Bible study. I just need to sit in God's presence and dig real deep and just be quiet. It just took me a long time to figure out how to sit on the floor, turn my mind off, and just be quiet. And sometimes God doesn't say anything. I'm just like, what? And then sometimes he's like, girl, come on, get yourself together. But that takes time. So snappy pants and sitting with God is my thing I got to do and stop being in control.
Sherelle, I call that bathtub moments. That's my spot. Like, do not enter.
I like it. Bathtub moments. All right. Anything else?
Being honest, I would say just be honest with the kids. I had a moment with my daughter about maybe like 5 years ago. I was at a campus that was just rough. Like emotionally, the teachers were tired. The kids, it was like fighting. It was just like one of the roughest schools in my district. And I think I was on a rampage for like that entire week. And like yourself, it was like, I want this house clean from top to bottom. I don't want, you just wash your face with that towel, put it in the washing machine. Like I was on it, like on 10 all the time. And my daughter She just had enough and broke down crying. She was like, I hate that you're a teacher. You're there for everybody else. When you come home, you're on empty. And I was destroyed, demolished. And so I had to do a whole lot of like praying to like repair that. And that took a while. And then even after, I believe in therapy. I definitely believe in going to counseling. So I went because it was like I'm on empty, but I'm constantly trying to pour into other people and I can't. So one of the things that my counselor told me to do was start being honest. It's okay for your children to hear you say, today was a lot. Mom needs a moment. Give me about 30 minutes. And then after 30 minutes, we can talk about your day. We can help with homework. And so I started doing that. I'll walk in the door and say, and they're used to me cooking because I'm from Louisiana. So the first time I came home with the hot and ready, they were like, what? We what? Like, they were upset. They were like, we don't do this. It's rice and gravy in this camp on a regular basis. What's wrong? But I had to like start saying it's a hot and ready night because mom has had a day, and tell them it's not your fault. I'm frustrated and I don't want you to frustration. So give me 30 minutes. Give me an hour. Don't knock on my door. If you're wise, you won't knock on my door until the timer goes off. And so now it's okay. So now my daughter will come in, or if my son lost a football game, instead of him coming home and lashing out at his sister, he'll say, hey, I'm not mad with you, sis. Like, today was rough. Like, you're gonna have to give me a minute, or I'm gonna holler at you tomorrow. But I notice now they can have that because I've done it often enough. But I had to learn the hard way, which goes back to give yourself some grace, because sometimes those moments are important for you to learn and reset.
That's really good. That's that communication everybody keeps talking about that then goes to teaching your kids indirectly how to monitor and not fight with your brother and sister. And that saved you another headache. So everybody's happy.
I'm laughing. Somebody in the chat said, what's a hot and ready? That's pizza. Come on now, people. Pizza, Little Caesars, really?
Is that a Louisiana thing, or is that just a hot and ready?
No, Little Caesars like
Little
has
Caesars.
like this thing. They're like hot and ready. It's like it's quick. You pay $5. It's like ready.
Gotcha.
Our equivalent to hot and ready is HEB Ready Meals. So we get it.
Hot and ready. If you didn't learn anything, it's gonna be hot and ready. You learn hot and ready. Go ahead. Oh, so also in the comments, if there's anything we're talking about that you want to know more about, or you have a question, please let us know on YouTube. Just make sure you're signed up on YouTube and add that to the chat. I think, did you ever, when you all were moms, becoming moms, now moms, did you ever struggle with feeling like you weren't ready or you weren't doing a good job? And I just wonder, I think every mom suffers from that. So how do you get that in control while pushing yourself to be a better mom? I think it's a struggle that, I'm not a mom, I don't know, but, just from what I hear from friends and family, it's like, you don't want to compare. Like, do you find yourself ever comparing with other moms?
Well, for the first part of your question, I remember being nervous. I was maybe 6 or 7 months pregnant, and I went to lunch with a friend who had a newborn, and well, not a newborn, but maybe 3 months. And she said, do you want to hold the baby? And I was like, sure, I'm about to be a mom. I'm excited. And I remember being like, oh gosh, what do I do with this? And in that moment, I was like, I'm about to have a baby in less than 3 months. What am I supposed to do? And I had held nieces and nephews, but you don't always, have them when they're that small, right? You think of babies, if you're not a mom yet, you're thinking 8, 9, 10 months. They're more durable. They're not going to just, break. And so I remember being nervous and feeling kind of inadequate. But once Joel was born, something just clicked. And I had other moms tell me that something would just happen. And it really did. I just went into motherhood mode. I never thought it was awkward holding Joa, not once. and a lot of things just came very, very natural. I was nervous about breastfeeding. I was nervous about getting them on a schedule. I was nervous about all kinds of things. And things just kind of fell into place by God's grace. So yeah, there was a little bit of nervousness, but you learn quickly and you learn on the fly.
That's good. Great advice. Another question someone had was, how do you navigate talking to your husband and making him comfortable about talking about women things about your daughter? So like breast and period and all the stuff that may make a guy uncomfortable, but it's a part of the daughter's growing up. Bras, all that jazz.
It was different for me. My husband was just so excited that he didn't care. He did not care. He was like, if I have to go to the store, I mean, he did more things for that girl that he did. I couldn't ask him to go get me stuff. And he would go to the store just as, what does she need? I mean, he was just so excited about it. Like, I have to do it. It's my baby. So I don't know how it was for you guys, but it was pretty easy for me.
Nice.
And I mean, but he also, I was also that mom where, you asked me something, we were probably the craziest people ever. We're going to research it. We're going to get the book. And then by the time we give her the answer, she's like, no, don't tell me anymore. Give me the short version, so I think we kind of work together. Yeah.
Yeah, just communicate. It sounds like that's good. Another question that someone had was about in-laws, and the woman was concerned about her in-laws wanted to have the baby or young child over for the weekend, and she's like, I don't know if I can do it. And I don't know if it was necessarily in-laws that was the factor, but maybe it was the separation of the child for a long period of time. Did you all struggle with that? And if not, it's okay.
Maybe the first one, but by the time you get to the third one, it's just be like, who want to come pick the baby? I mean, the first one is like, oh, the baby fell. Everybody stop. The baby. The second one be like, oh, well, let me dust him off. He gonna be all right. He gonna learn. Like, I wonder if that's from a new mom.
Yeah, it sounds like a new mom.
But I get it. I was that mom in the beginning because I was like, no, my baby has to have organic milk, And my mother was like, this pet milk is fine. We grew up on, I'm like, Lord, not the pet. He survived. I would like to tell you he's 13. He's just fine. But I just think some of that is our control, right? I think we want this so-called perfect life, but life is beautiful when it's messy. And I think as parents, that's why we miss so many great moments, because we've defined success as perfect grades. Your child, Jesus not going to get to heaven talking about, did he get an A? Like, do he know who the Lord is? We've defined success. And so I think we got to live in the moment and not try to control so many things. And yes, it'll be fine. Do steps. Send them for 30 minutes, pick them up, and then the next time send them for an hour, and then just like stretch yourself, until you feel comfortable. And I'm sure she's a wonderful mother. You'll be just fine.
And that goes back to what you were saying earlier about recharging and having time, me time and couple time. And hey, if somebody take the kids, you can do that. So that works out. Well, as we wrap up, I definitely want to leave everyone with some more advice. And one question I wanted each and every one of you to answer was, what are some things that you know now that you wish you would have known before you became a mother? I wish I had Jeopardy music on this point, like doo, 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 doo. Everybody's thinking about the answer.
You're on mute, Sherelle.
I think the one thing for me is how rewarding it really is, and also how gut-wrenching it can be too. I think it could be, you know, you don't, during the different stages that they're going through. I mean, it's all love throughout it, but I mean, sometimes you're just in some days you're just like, oh, they're just, oh, you just love them so much. And then some days you're like, you know, it's just, it's a wonderful ride, and it's so rewarding at the end of the ride.
Very nice.
I think my two things is, one, I would tell myself, you can do hard things. I still tell myself that. I think, you know, this life, a few things Jesus promised is that we're going to have suffering. It's not like we love the fluffy stuff, but we hate to talk about the suffering. And so I always remind myself when life gets really hard, and I know it's going to get really hard sometimes, but I write down in my journal or on my mirror, you can do hard things. And so that's one thing I tell myself. Another thing that I wish I would have told myself is that instead of trying to make my child's life easy, that I need to help them handle the hard things. Like life's going to have a lot of fires. There's going to be a lot of times that their world's going to be crumbling, but remind them that they can do those hard things. And teach them how to suffer well, because I really feel like from out of the suffering is where your children have the most growth in their lives. And I think a lot of times the reason some of our children grow up broken is because we've never allowed them to suffer, and we've never sat in that suffering with them instead of trying to. I remember someone said one time, the most impactful thing, I think she was struggling with something happened traumatic in her life. And she's like, I don't remember the friend that bought me flowers. I don't remember the friend that caught me. The friend that I remember is the one that came and sat and just was quiet, because I remember that person's presence and they sat with me in my suffering. And so I think about that with my children when they suffer, instead of trying to like put my super mom cape on and dash in and say, don't you talk to my baby like that. You know, I sit on the playground and I really analyze like, oh, they were mean to her. How did he handle that? I got 3 boys. And sometimes I'll step in when it go a little left, and we talk about what happened. And sometimes I see that they handle it and they get in her. I say, Mom, that hurt my feelings. Well, tell me why, you know, and let's talk about how that could have been different. But allow them that opportunity, because I really think it's beautiful when we allow our kids to suffer or have those experiences young, and we can be with them. And then when they get older, they remember like, that happened to me before, and I knew how to handle that, and I can handle this. I can do hard things, you know? So.
That's so true. That's good, Sherelle, because the one thing that for me, especially as they get a little bit older and you're sending them off to college, is, you know, not parenting out of fear, you know, and it's your mind can go crazy when it comes to your love, those little babies, you know, and, you know, what can you do to, you know, not helicopter, but, you know, what can I do to save them from that? No, you have to trust God and really depend on him. And I mean, you will have the humility. You will, you know, those kids will, you just have to trust God and not have the spirit of fear, you know, and because I think you could potentially give that to your kid, and then they won't know the promises of God, you know.
And the last thing I would probably say is you can be a mom and you can take care of yourself. It took me a long time to learn what it meant to have like self-care. And I know we see it all over Instagram and people post 1,000 times, but what does that really look like? And just know that by not taking care of yourself, you're teaching your kids not to do that too. So my kids called today and they went to Louisiana to take care of their sick grandparents, but they called and were like, what are you doing? And I said, you got 5 minutes because mama's about to walk into the spa, and I'm out. So now, you know, I've learned how to do that and do it and not feel guilty, because for the longest I would feel like if I'm doing for me, I'm not being there for them. Balance is so important. You really cannot pour from an empty cup. If you don't take care of yourself, you are no good to anyone else. So that's okay. You can do both.
can I add to that? Because I think it's really, really good when she talked about self-care. And I would challenge moms to think about when you're tired or you're weary, the difference between self-care and numbing. Because I can speak from personal experience. Numbing looks like shopping a lot or constantly being on social media or just like those are a few examples, but self-care is like drinking more water, moving my body, logging off of social media and really sitting down to figure out how do I feel about something or sit in my emotion about, I'm angry. Why am I angry? Let's talk. Let's sit down and think about that. So just self-care is so good, but I also challenge mothers, like, don't numb. When you have free time, don't just sit there and scroll and look at everybody else's life and compare yourself, or don't just like go shopping because you're so stressed and you gotta, or go, it's some women, for me, sometimes it used to be, I had to analyze my relationship with food because it was like, I'm gonna give me a pint of ice cream and sit in the bed, but that's numbing, right? That's not really self-care.
Wait, don't go for the ice cream though, not the ice cream. Bluebell just dropped a new flavor, sis.
OMG.
Listen, I love it until I can't fit none of my clothes. And I'm like, my Lord, my body is a temple. I gotta take care.
I'm gonna deviate just a little bit from your question. Instead of something I wish I would have known, when Patrice was talking and she just talked about the faithfulness of God, I just wanted to just throw in here that I am on a Thriving Motherhood podcast. And 4 years ago, the doctor told me I would never have kids without any intervention. And I thought about that earlier this week. I didn't know I was going to bring it up, but if you are watching and you are a mom, or you desire to be a mom, or you desire to be married and then have kids, trust the Lord. I am telling you, the doctors, they wrote me off. And we did all kinds of procedures. We did all kinds of things. We prayed for years, like years and years and years. And here I am talking to you about some of my experiences as a mother. So I just, I want to encourage you to keep going. Have those feelings, be frustrated, ask God to give you, the wisdom, the comfort, the, where to go, things of that nature. But trust that the Lord will come through.
Amen. I mean, that was a mic drop. I wanted to marinate a little bit. Thank you so much for sharing. I just want to recap what you all said because I was taking notes. I had my little old school with a pen. It was like teaching your children how to deal with hard times, not parenting out of fear, self-care without the guilt, and then trusting the Lord. I mean, that just wraps up it all so much. And I just truly have been blessed by you all. So thank you so much for your insight, ladies. And I hope everyone who's been watching and listening and typing away in the chat was blessed as well. The topic is not enough for one podcast. So I'm sure we'll definitely be back with more down the road. But before we go, we want to remind you, you can follow the Wise Women Project on Instagram. It's Wise Women Project. And then on Facebook, it's WWP CBF. So WWP space CBF, because this is the women's ministry and it's a part of Crossover Bible Fellowship. So remember that you are not surviving motherhood. That's why it was crossed out in the promo. You are thriving motherhood, and this should help you even more and just show yourself grace. So thank you everyone for joining, and have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you.